his coffee at home.
Nice.
All right.
Very nice.
Okay, let's do this. Hey everyone. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you are doing well. Today we are embarking on an exclusive conversation with the one and only DJ and producer, Baauer. You may know him for many bangers over the years, but recently I have kind of reconnected with him and his content because he's been doing this really cool stream and music exploration series where he's, going live, posting to social media, talking about a lot of classic and legendary and amazing beats and productions that have been dropped over the years, going through their inner workings, their nuances, and especially the samples that are at the core of a lot of these tracks, and a lot of his commentary and a lot of his observations as a seasoned music fan, but also an artist, a successful artist himself, kind of, bring a lot of insight into the things that he's saying. And I thought it would be amazing to bring him on to stream to sort of pick his brain a little more deeply and kind of talk about what he feels about sampling generally, his sampling philosophy as a music fan and an artist. And he agreed. He actually agreed. I didn't have to twist his arm too much. I didn't have to, say, hey, I got this dirt on you. If you don't come on stream, I'm going to tell the world about it. He just agreed to do it out of the goodness of his heart. And Baauer, I appreciate you coming through.
And thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan, and I was thrilled when you reached out. So glad to be here.
Don't say you're not a big fan. What are my what are my last 10 review scores?
10, 10, 5, light 2, light 4.
Nailed it.
Do you love it? Do you hate it? What would you rate it?
Nailed it. He knows. Okay, I will no longer doubt that you're a big fan. You know all the scores. All right.
I'm a real fan.
Well, you're also a fan of music. And, again, we will link to your Instagram page and your socials down below so people can check out this stuff and the conversations that you're having for themselves. But kind of kick the conversation off.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, if you could kind of put into a summation, what is your general philosophy when it comes to taking essentially what is another person's piece of music and working it into your own? What's your approach? What are some of your preferences? What are some of those do's and don'ts that you feel like are important to, embrace or avoid when you're, kind of borrowing from somebody else's work and creating your own through that process?
That's a big question.
It is a big question.
Let me start by saying, for me, this is a big convo. For me, just to start off with, it's what I fell in love with about music. It's what, brought me into music, brought me into producing, made me love certain artists, it's just totally what, entranced me at first, is just, the magic of taking something and reworking it and, making it something else.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the basis of why I even started making music at all. So it's something I really love, and yeah, man. I want and when you talk about that kind of being a basis for you, what time period are we talking? And at what age are you kind of making this connection and this discovery? Yeah. I'm talking about that perfect time, the primo time to get into music and find out who you are as a music fan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What is that time?
Teens.
Okay, early teens.
Early teens.
But what decade?
Oh, what decade?
Yeah.
Early 2000s.
Okay, early 2000s. And
early 2000s.
Is this a discovery that you're making as somebody who's just generally consuming mainstream music content and maybe casually hearing a sample in that context, or are you starting to kind of get into making music and music production yourself and discovering these kind of these Easter eggs along the way?
I think, it's when I start to dig that little bit deeper and discover the people I like Daft Punk and Doom and people like that, and listen to what they're doing and wonder, wait, what's going on here? What is this? And through just music that I discover and like dig a little deeper and discover what they're doing, that, you know, it's in fact a sample and they're reworking, so, you know, in another piece of music.
And I don't know, give me an example of an early track or a song like during this time, during this process that kind of like blew your mind in terms of like the piece of music that was borrowed from and how it was kind of changed around or applied. You know, you've talked about examples of this like Daft Punk on your stream and stuff like that, but you know, what are some other, you know, instances that kind of stand out for you?
Yeah, Daft Punk, of course, is a big one. Fatboy Slim is a big one too, because he was all over the radio at that time.
He was
with like "Praise You" and stuff.
And I loved that. That was more the time I was a kid and listening to the radio and consuming a lot of mainstream music, and I loved those songs.
Right? They're great songs.
They are.
They're fun.
They're anthems.
And they're anthems. And just without knowing they were samples, it's a little like, what is going on here? Is this a band? Like, is this the singer singing this? It's like, it's kind of like confusing in a way, you know, but in a way that's compelling.
Right.
So I'd say Fatboy Slim was a big one, just for discovering, you know, it was in fact a sample, and then what the samples were and how he flipped it. And to this day, I love the way he does the sampling.
And, you know, in your opinion, as an artist who observes flips and has done them himself, like, you know, as far as the process goes, what goes into a good quality flip for you? What to you makes a flip creative per se? I mean, I'm sure there have been instances, and we'll talk about this, where, you know, you hear a sample in a song, you go to listen to the original and you're like, oh, well, this is not treated in an interesting way.
Right. It can be like, what the hell?
This is literally
they didn't do anything.
Right. They didn't do anything. Like, you know, but when you're talking about not doing anything, what is that something? What is that extra something that an artist does to sort of treat a piece of music, treat a sample that makes it feel special when used in the context of a new song?
I think it really is just the way you present it at the end. It's like, you know, when you go to a museum and you see a piece of art that's just a canvas painted white, and you're like, my 5-year-old could do that. It's similar. Like, maybe an artist takes a big chunk of a sample and just puts a kick drum behind it. But at the end of the day, if it's an anthem, if it's a banger, then it's good, you know? It's kind of like the idea, and they did it. And if the idea is successful, then that to me makes a great sample. So it could be the most basic, not like low intervention thing. But if it ends up as a banger, it's a great sample as far as I'm concerned.
As far as like low intervention and higher intervention, what matters most is like whether or not it hits and it appeals to people.
100%. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Is there anything to you that sort of like adds to the magic or mysticism of sampling in terms of like the popularity or obscurity of the sample? I mean, sometimes, you know, a sample can really pop off or be interesting because when you dig into it, the artist really had to do, I don't know, some crate digging or some sleuthing or something to come across it. And it sort of becomes a thing where they kind of, you know, pull a diamond out of the rough, or, you know, remind everybody of something that was forgotten long ago.
Yeah, I love that. Like, if you look on Who's Sampled, which, by the way, is I want to shout them out. Basically, all my content is just me on this website, Who's Sampled. So check them out. They're great website. They do great work. But sometimes you'll see that somebody found a sample like in some weird record, and it's like at minute 5, you know, like 5-6 minutes into some weird track, they like caught something. And that's amazing to me. That just shows that like this artist is just, they're on all the time. They're always listening, you know? And so maybe this thing was playing for 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden, oh, what's that? That caught their ear, you know? And they decide to grab it. So yeah, stuff like that. I love that. I love stuff like that. It's great.
Do you feel like Who Sampled and the collective kind of effort and consciousness of the internet kind of like really, you know, pulling up the floorboards with this stuff and you know, documenting it into almost like this internet encyclopedia in a way. Do you feel like that enhances the art form of sampling, or kind of maybe does, I don't know, ruin maybe trade secrets, stuff like that. You know, I mean, I have seen artists throw out opinions before where they're like, well, you know, I feel some type of way about somebody kind of calling out all the samples I've used, or, you know, essentially exposing all the work that I've done, because other people didn't discover these bits. Other people didn't dig through these crates. Other people didn't look through this stuff. I did, you know, and now it's just kind of being like broken down and simplified on this, you know, easy to search database. You know, at the end of the day, do you feel like that's a net positive or a net negative?
You know, that's a good conversation. I'm certainly benefiting from it personally.
Right.
But I think you sort of your question makes me think of a comment I've been getting on some of my videos, which is stop sample snitching.
Right. I mean, in a way, you're
snitching.
You're kind of contributing that into your own right. Yeah.
Yes. Which I thought at first when I saw that, I thought, this is absurd. What's sample snitching? What is this ridiculousness? But I looked into a little bit more, and there was a time when producers were getting dinged because they had been releasing stuff with uncleared samples.
Right.
And other people would be like, hey, look at this sample. And then they would actually get in legal trouble.
Right.
But I think that was a different time. I don't think that could happen anymore.
In terms of an artist getting in trouble over a sample?
Yes, in terms of like getting a song out there with a sample in it and having it be like, I just don't think that just in today's environment, you would have to clear that sample before. You would have to clear the sample.
I mean, just for the sake of debate, I mean, you know, which I'm not afraid to get into it with you. I mean, I'm seeing examples. You know, and some of which, like, I mean, are pretty brazen, and I feel like the artists kind of know what they're doing, and I think they presume to some degree because they're flying under the radar, they can kind of get away with it, and they do so until they end up getting dinged. I saw a post recently from an electronic music artist. I think you may be familiar with. Have you heard of DJ Sabrina, the Teenage DJ?
I've heard the name just because what an incredible name.
I know, it's an amazing name.
I'm not familiar with their music.
Well, I'm not too familiar with their music. She makes you know, house tracks, and you know, they're often very, very, very sample heavy, not just on the musical end, but also as a part of her aesthetic. She kind of favors throwing in a lot of kind of maybe meaningful or sometimes emotional dialogue from television dramas or sitcoms and stuff like that. So you'll often hear like these long strands of like conversation buried in the background on a lot of tracks. It's not my personal preference, but it is kind of their style. And, you know, they recently did kind of post on Instagram that there was a ding. You know, now, you know, her music has been getting more and more popular over the years. And I mean, there's so many samples on these records that, you know, kind of another one of her calling cards is that her albums are extremely long. Her latest, in fact, was like over 4 hours or so, if I remember correctly. So, you know, we're talking like countless samples accumulating across one record that no way one independent artist, you know, could, you know, do it. I mean, another example, and I've talked about this in the review for the record, is this Blue album over here next to my head, where he pulls multiple very recognizable, very in-your-face Beatles samples throughout the record that, like, you know, I don't think anybody's under any sort of, you know, presumption that that was like cleared off the bat. I don't know what the status is now, but there's definitely artists out there who are just doing it and just kind of like, you know.
Which, that's tight. That's like punk to me, you know? Just saying fuck it and doing it. But right, as you say, like, the bigger you get, the more eyeballs you get, and then eventually people will... Or, you know, people are going to come after you for using these samples.
From your own perspective, as somebody who's operated in the music industry for such a long time at this point, like, what do you feel like right now is kind of the temperature around, you know, sort of like sampling and the process of approval and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm old enough to remember a time when Danger Mouse was like enemy number one in the music industry because he did that Gray album record where it was like Beatles samples, Jay-Z samples. And the thing is, like, it was just a viral free internet album that he printed some random copies of and, like, you know, handed them to college stations and stuff like that. It was not a commercial release, but even going as far as to do that, put him in the hot seat, and he got cease and desists and was blackballed and was like, you can't do this. You can't do this. And, you know, again, there was a time where even sampling and putting out a release like that without trying to capitalize off of it in the way that some of these artists are, who I was just talking about, you know, throwing up a record on Bandcamp that's full of samples, would, again, sort of like, you know, turn you into this pariah. You know, nowadays it seems like things are a bit more lax, but still, again, you can get put in the hot seat if you get caught doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I don't think, like, I think maybe more they're relaxed in terms of, like, saying, like, you can't do this, but they're not relaxed in terms of having to clear the samples and stuff. Like these publishing companies and like they're so intense on getting their money. Like, I just know from me clearing samples, which I still, like, I'm doubling, tripling down on sampling. Like, in all my music, I'm using samples, doing samples, finding samples, flipping them. And so I need to clear these samples before I release them. And it is a hard process, man, clearing these samples. Even like obscure, weird samples. I search, most of what I do is just trawl YouTube and the internet for interesting, cool samples that, and I think, like, oh, this is obscure. Like, I'll be able to clear this because it's weird. It has like 10 plays, you know, but it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter how obscure it is, whatever. Like, people, like, I think these labels and companies, they see like the money that can be made. So they they're pretty tough when it comes to clearing a sample. And usually they want 100% of the publishing. They're like, hey, we can clear this, but we want 100% publishing on this, or something like that. So it's tough.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of fucking insane. Like, how, with those kinds of standards and expectations, how do you or anybody as the artist end up making money at the end of the day? Because, you know, if you're talking about 100% of publishing, and I imagine sometimes on tracks, maybe you're clearing multiple samples. How can you split that publishing or give 100% to one person when there's also another sample and somebody's expecting, you know, their portion too? At the end of the day, like, you know, do you end up questioning the process of doing this because this whole process makes it so time consuming and just takes so much money out of your pocket that it's not even worth it?
Yes. And my team has said to me before, like, dude, you just stop doing samples. Like, this would be so much easier if you just didn't use samples. But you know what? I don't know. All I can do is like, just like, I don't know, just my gut is just like, this is, like I said, it's what, like, I fell in love with in the first place in terms of making music and DJing and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, I don't know. It's how I like to do it.
So then for you as an artist, is kind of like the business side end up being more with like performing or merch or stuff like that? Or are there ways to still sort of like, you know, negotiate these publishing percentages down and sort of make it make sense?
Yeah, you can. I mean, right. It's tough to negotiate. Really, you're looking at touring.
Right.
Like, if you're going to sample a song and give away all the publishing, okay, but it better be a big smash hit so you can go tour.
Right.
Then you can keep all your money, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's what a lot of radio, like, it's not quite sampling, but all these radio hits you hear, like, are all like interpolations, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
that's
not quite
kind
samples,
of the other thing.
but there's so many interpolations, which is in the, you know, in the same zone, kinda.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be sort of an agreement for that as well. you know, because I mean, nobody's just blatantly ripping off another artist's lyrics and melodies and just like putting it out without an agreement beforehand.
No, I think, right. I can't say exactly, but I would guess that they are giving away most or all publishing.
You're just going to have to put out your own interpolation and find out.
That's right. Which, hey, I'll do an interpolation. I'm blue, dabu dee, dabu die. Part 2.
I mean, that does kind of seem like the new wave as of late. Do you feel like that's kind of inspired by anything, or that there's any kind of like, you know, incentive there for the labels or for the artists that's like kind of driving this sort of thing? Or do you think it's merely like people are running the fuck out of ideas and they're like, let's just rehash a bunch of shit from the 90s and 2000s and just serve it up again?
I think we're in a cultural moment of like looking back and, you know,
and by moment you mean void.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Anthony? Do you think this is a moment, or do you think we are at the end, like we've reached the tank is empty, so to speak?
You know, I think I don't know what the benefit is at the end of the day for the artist, outside of maybe kind of like an agreement or an understanding or a guarantee that the label is like going to continue to kind of platform them and sort of push them and, you know, like continue their popularity cycle for making music like this. But I definitely see sort of like the incentive on the label side to release music like this and maybe suggest to artists that they release music like this or give them the opportunity to release music like this, because, you know, it saves them writing time at the end of the day. Because something was a hit prior, it's almost guaranteed to be a hit again if it's kind of reintroduced to people. And on top of it,
IP.
Right, exactly. And on top of it, like the label ends up kind of like creating this gross cycle of kind of like self-serving money-making capitalism, whatever, because, you know, they already own the rights, I'm sure, to the song that they want sort of like interpolated, and they end up kind of like paying themselves probably numerous times off the popularity of the new song, off of the, you know, sort of like, you know, intellectual property of the old song, and so on and so forth. So it kind of becomes like this weird feedback loop in a way that I'm sure also incentivizes people to go listen back to the old track too. It's like, oh, this is this new popular song. Let's go listen to the old track as well. You know, so I sort of can see from the outside the business incentives that would sort of push that kind of trend for sure.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, for you, is it, you know, we've been talking about a lot of positives. You know, are there some, in your opinion, some no-nos, some wrongs, some things that you personally feel like are gross as a music fan and an artist when it comes to sampling? Is there something in terms of like a way of sampling, a way of going about it, sampling certain types of things that, you know, to you feels like wrong or offensive, or like you're crossing a boundary of some sort?
No, I say first and foremost, the original artist should get credit.
Right.
Like, I support sampling in every way, but the original artist should get credit and should get paid. And I think that way it can be a beautiful thing of new creations and like nods to the past, and where everyone can benefit from it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's sort of like that rarely happens. You know what I mean? So like, that's the only thing I would say is like the only negative is when someone is sampled and the original artist, you know, doesn't benefit from it at all. And they're left in the lurch, you know, which unfortunately happens a lot, but that's more, you know, because of whatever situation they had during the release of the original song. You know what I mean? Like, I can say that when you clear samples, not rarely, but so many times, the people who are own the rights are not the artist.
Yeah.
You know?
It's their label or it's their publisher.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know, recently when I did a review of Abbey Road, I had to remind myself when I was doing research that it wasn't necessarily Chuck Berry who sued John Lennon over those Come Together lyrics. It was his publisher for the song that sued him after sort of like, seeing that connection, obviously. It sort of feels like you're talking about two different and very difficult experiences on both ends of this kind of tube, where you have artists who are having a frustrating time getting paid for their work, clearing samples, getting approvals. It's expensive, it's long, it's tough. You have artists on the other end who may or may not be getting credit or getting, their just due. What do you feel like is happening in between point A and point B that's making everything harder than it needs to be? Like, what in your experience or in your view are some changes or some streamlines that could happen that would just make this easier and simpler for everybody? And hopefully hopefully have better outcomes. Like, if you could snap your fingers or make a wish,
Yeah, I don't know. That's a big, I don't know. I would like everyone to be able to, like, the original artists of these tracks to get the proper credit they deserve. And then I think on the other side, it would be great if there was a way to have a pre-made terms for sampling, maybe, where you could like, say there's a catalog, a record label's catalog, and they just have pre-set out terms of like, okay, you can sample this, but we will take X amount, of the writing and blah, blah, blah. And so, that way I think people, it would be good for everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean,
that's a little bit... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, there are actually kind of like interfaces and databases like that when it comes to sort of like media publishing for shows and stuff like that. Labels or publishers will put out a list of like artists or works. One of these companies that does exactly that just bought fucking Bandcamp. I'm sure with the incentive that they're like, oh, look at this, look at all this music that we now have on our platform, and we could sort of like, herd all of these artists into a database and be like, well, you could get a chunk of money off of your music if you offer it up for publishing for Netflix shows and this and that and this other thing, So there are companies like this that exist, but they're operating in kind of a different space. They're not saying, hey, here's all of our available music for sampling, and if you sample it, you have to give this percentage, you have to agree to this, you have to do that, and you have to notify us, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. It's again, it's a database with a different purpose. However, I imagine that there could be something similar when it comes to, incorporating someone's music into your music. I mean, again, in theory, it sort of seems like it makes sense, but like, are there some, I guess, kind of like maybe ways in which that doesn't map over? Like, I mean, obviously using someone's music in a show is different than using it in a track. Are there sort of like protests that you think artists would kind of have when it comes to having even a track of yours, for example? Are there more sort of like worries or concerns that you personally would have if a track that you made was being used as a television theme, as opposed to somebody's going to loop some shit you did and put it into, a new banger?
Yeah, potentially. And I don't know how you get around that.
And what are those concerns? Like, are you worried about like the song sucking? Like, I don't want my sample used in a song that sucks.
Right. I guess, it's right. When you put it like that, right now, my mentality is use it. And I like, go ahead for anything, whatever. In fact, I just saw Smokey Robinson was listening to a flip. This, Wookie, the producer Wookie.
Enlighten me.
Well, he's like a producer. He also does like a lot of like sort of content where he flips like classic songs. So I don't know how the clearance works with him, but he's flipping all these classic songs. And so he flipped a Smokey Robinson. He flipped My Girl. and it became kind of a, it caught on a little bit. Big DJs started playing it. It's like a house flip of My Girl. And then there's a clip of Smokey Robinson listening to the remix, and he's like, he's like, I like this. And he just says to the camera, like, I love remixing, sampling, anything. So if you want to remix my song, if you want to sample it, go ahead, go crazy. I love it. And like, to me, I'm like, wow, like this guy's the best. Like, what a king. And to me, that's like the best mentality to have, is like, you know what? Take it. Like, it's if you have an idea, if you want to do something with it, like, do it. I support it in every way.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird and funny sometimes stories like that. Like, I remember, I think it was like in a Nardwuar interview, 2 Chainz was talking about a song off of his, was it Based on a True Story? Either way, he took a sample off of this old satirical songwriter from the 1950s on that Dope Peddler song. I don't know if you remember that track at all, but he says that the guy just like gave him the sample to use for free. But yeah, the dude used to make like this old kind of satirical piano music where he's singing about a drug dealer, and again, to think of the era that he was doing it in, but he kind of would do it in this mocking old timey style, like, oh, the old dope peddler, he's coming to town, and yeah. And just like completely fucking nuts, unhinged shit. And again, because it was like so weird and obscure and just kind of like, unforeseen as like a sample material, and not a lot of people knew about the guy's music, or, kind of were aware of it or were paying all that much attention. He just said, go ahead, just use it. Just use the sample.
I like that. Yeah. To me, like, that's what I strive. I admire that. I admire that mentality, and that's what I want to strive to be myself, is like, this is for the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, take it, do whatever you want with it. Like, and then of course, just to also mention, Smokey Robinson absolutely has that tip-top law team. So yes, you can flip it, but they will make sure this man gets paid. So let's, just to make that clear.
Right.
But I love the mentality. I love but to bring it back to the first, I just love the thing, it's for the world.
That may be kind of like, maybe the logistical gap that we're talking about, because, it's easy for somebody like Smokey Robinson to have that attitude when it comes to, the freedom around sort of sampling music and creativity in that sense. When, you have adequate legal representation to make sure that you're protected and taken care of. And that's not the case for a lot of artists, for the vast majority of artists, and
100%. Some people, that's the way they live. That's their, like, they're eking by on getting paid off of one song, maybe,
to kind of shift gears, I'd like to ask you, kind of an interesting conversation piece here that my fans talked to me about a little earlier in the year. And if you guys want to start maybe throwing out some questions that we can give to Baauer, I think that would be great, because I'd love to get some of you guys into the conversation too. Just let you know in chat. But one kind of polarizing thing that happened earlier this year is, Doja Cat had that really huge hit with, what was it again? Hell, I said I paint the town red. Let's paint the town red. And it was that Dionne
Walk On By.
Yeah, it was the Dionne Warwick sample. And there was another producer who was kind of like, making some noise on the internet, because he had flipped, and he was pretty well known. He had some past successes. He had flipped that sample in the exact same way. Obviously that's not the first time that sample was used. There are lots of other, songs in which that sample had been used before, but that sample hadn't been flipped specifically and chopped in exactly that way. And he had sort of like shown that he had done that flip, he had done that chop like a year or so prior. And, but the thing is, like, when it comes to that sort of thing, there's not really any legal recourse. You know what I mean? You can't, like, obviously, if I write a song and I write a melody and I write lyrics and I catch somebody copying that, I can immediately go after them and say, those are my lyrics. That's my song. That's my recording. That's my melody. I recorded it here. It's the exact same thing. Da 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 da. But because it's the same idea, but it's based on somebody else's work, there's not you can't drag somebody into court because somebody sampled the same piece of music in the same way that you did. You know what I mean?
No.
Like,
yeah.
I guess what are your thoughts on that kind of like weird limbo? You know, because there's like really no accountability for that.
Yeah, that is hard. You're stuck. It sucks. It sucks. Like if that happens to you, I don't know. It sucks. Like that's happened to me before.
Oh, has it?
Kinda. Like, yeah. But I have the privilege to be able to go, oh well, that's how it goes. Keep working. Keep going.
Yeah, you have a name. You have a brand. You have a career. You can kind of move on.
Yeah, I can say keep moving. Like it just shit happens, you know. But yeah, it's not so easy. If you can't say that, it's tough. Because there's nothing you can really do there. I guess what you could do is make a big stink on the internet and try to get some attention off of it. That's probably your best move in that case.
One person is asking, what in your opinion is your most favorite sample work in your own catalog? What's maybe a track you can go back to, which I think is a good example for this conversation for people who are looking to kind of like understand your approach. What's a track from your own catalog that you can go back to where you're like, fuck, I really did that. Were you really proud? Were you really proud of yourself?
Yes, there's this track of mine called Clang where I sampled this weirdo outsider German artist, and it was a track that he made of him slapping his own belly. And he like recorded it, so it's just fleshy slapping sounds, and I used it like as a percussion element in the track. And so just as a sample, I love that so much. And then to make it even better, the guy, when we were clearing it, he was like, oh, can I just talk to Baauer? I just want to talk to him. And we talked, and he was like, oh, I'm so, like, I was just slapping my belly on that track. Like, I'm so glad you took it. But, like, the vibes were just great. So that, on both ends, that's definitely a favorite of mine. So, yeah, check out Clang.
Would you say simultaneously that's also the weirdest thing that you've sampled?
It's up there. I don't know if I could think of a weirder. That's got to be up there. Let me try to think, but yeah, like a tubby man slapping his own belly. I don't know if it gets much better.
No, it is true. I don't know if it gets.
I actually don't know if he's portly or not, but I just assume because the slaps.
Because they sounded like big slaps.
They had a nice tone. Yeah.
What do you think about We're talking a lot about sort of like artist to artist, song to song sampling here. I think also about an artist like Death Grips or sort of like, Andy Morin or Zach Hill, for example, who, when a lot of fans have kind of like dug through their catalog, or even artists like Tyler, the Creator, have done this, where there are sort of like key samples in some of their most popular songs that like are essential to the rhythm or the melody or whatever. And it's not so much a sample of a record they found somewhere. It's some random fucking YouTube video, or it's like, some Vine, or like, just like some weird extra piece of internet audio that was just sort of like, lurking off 4chan or some shit, or in some kind of weird forum or corner somewhere that, people aren't finding samples now in music shops. They're sort of like, going in weird enclaves on the internet to find, samples for their songs, like,
which is so cool.
Amazing. It is cool. It's amazingly cool. Have you ever done anything like that? Known anybody who's done like that? And in your experience, from what you understand, like, is the process of that far different from sort of sampling another artist's song? Is it something that, you see other people kind of like getting away with more brazenly because it's maybe a weirder kind of like gray area?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I don't know if I can say with personal experience. I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll think of something. Like I literally just made a post about a track where I sampled something from freesound.org. Shout out to freesound.org. Great website. And that was it's just a weird internet sound, not a song or anything. So that was free, which is great. But yeah, like I can think of like Burial does that a lot.
Yeah.
And even Mr. Fred again, he's making big songs off of like using like people just saying a poem on YouTube or something. Yeah, I don't know how that works with the clearances, like clearing that or getting them credit. I'm not sure how that works. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine to some degree there might be, I don't know, more leverage or sort of like maybe more of an even playing field in terms of like discussing or, I guess like coming to a legal agreement, because there's not going to be that giant sort of like team associated with the label when maybe you're doing something like sampling a sound of a street musician on YouTube. But I mean, I guess you still have to go out of your way to find you got to locate the person. You know what I mean? It's like they're not on a label,
which is hard too.
Yeah, which is also hard. I mean, if you're,
it's tough. Let's say if it's someone's video of someone else that they don't even know, like maybe they were on a trip somewhere and took a video, like that gets sticky.
Yeah, I don't know. There's weird layers to it. There's weird layers.
Yeah, there's layers, and I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
But Well, I was going to say you also have to consider like there's also, sort of like a gray area depending on what is the TOS on the platform that you're uploading it on too, because all sorts of, websites lay claim to of, whatever content is uploaded on their platform, be it Meta or TikTok or whatever, that there's like certain rights attached to it because it's uploaded here. Or people can't be held accountable for a certain, whatever, because it's, you're finding it on this platform.
Yeah. What kind of makes me think of a little bit is like Barstool Sports kind of accounts that just repost other people's content,
Right.
And right. They ultimately get clicks and views off of that. But I don't know what they're making money.
They're just tagging.
They're making money. They're profiting. And then they hit them with a tag or something. It's this similar kind of vibe. And, that video could be some mystery person. Who knows who it is,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. Yeah, the internet opens up such crazy things. But just the concept of like sampling meme stuff or weird videos, I just think that's great.
Yeah, I
love that stuff.
Like if you decided to sample Nyan Cat tomorrow. Although Nyan Cat's pretty popular and very much copyrighted at this point.
There you go. Right. If it's something that's a solid enough meme, I think it probably has some copyright, some kind of legal something to it.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I want to ask you this other person's question first before maybe I get into the obvious topic here, but I mean, you've had it happen to you on the flip side, which is, pretty storied at this point in terms of not you sampling a meme, but you just making a music and it becoming a meme. I don't know how much you would have to say off of that at this point, because you've talked about it a million times probably. But somebody in the chat wants to know what the vocal sample is on the track Group.
Oh yeah, Group. Good question. I could probably look it up right now. I think it was from a sample pack. It's like kids like talking or something.
As far as like your creative process goes, and sort of like how people kind of like maybe romanticize the process of sampling and discovering samples and so on and so forth. I mean, what do you think generally about things? I mean, given that you used one, about things like sample packs. Often are they just like filled with all of this just generic whack shit that's totally pointless? Or, whether or not there's gold there, does that depend on your creativity and your own process? Because, I think there are some people that kind of go into it assuming like, the best way to sample and the only way to sample is you got to go to the vinyl shop. You got to dig for an hour. You got to I think there are some people that sort of see the whole idea of it as being a lot less sexy when you're like, okay, I've downloaded the sample pack. I've opened it up. I'm just going to go through all the files here until, But it's true though. I mean, but the thing is, like, I think there's some people that kind of close themselves off to the possibility of making a great song that way because it's, seen as like way less sexy of a way of finding a piece of, audio for a song that you're making, going through a sample pack as opposed to, inhaling, a vinyl mold for a couple of hours at the record store.
That's right. Yeah, like was it, the carpenter doesn't blame his tools. You know what's that? The carpenter's tools.
Go on. Point, it's a good analogy.
Like I think if you got it, if you're good, you can make a banger out of anything. Download the most basic, boring sample pack, the most like dry, digital, stale, whatever it may be. You better be able to make some good out of it, because then you know what I mean. Then you've earned your that's called you earn your whatever. I don't know what I mean, but then go and get a nice vinyl record. You know what I'm saying? But first, be able to make something out of just the most basic sample pack. And also, you made me think about sample packs. Like, I found that older ones, a lot like, I don't know, music or anything else, older sample packs are really nice and like are better.
In terms of older, like what time frame are we talking here?
Like 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And then I found that a lot of them are available on the internet just free. I think because they're so old that like they're kind of like sort of forgotten, maybe, and they're all up just on shout out archive.org, another incredible website. Like you can go on archive.org and download all of these old 90s, 2000s sample packs from like, the early days of trance and dance,
you're giving everybody in chat like some serious like gold here.
Yeah. Like stuff that literally I was doing a Daft Punk sample breakdown, and I saw one of the things is someone ID'd a sample from a sample pack that they used. Like, and like I'm such a nerd, but like just the thought of like I'm using the same sample pack as Daft Punk, like fuck yeah, dude. But like I've just found that too. Like maybe nowadays, like a sample pack can sound pretty like digital and stale, but I found that older ones, not only are they free, they sound nice. They have something nice to them.
When you say these sample packs are out there, they're discoverable, they're free, to your understanding, is like the old copyright and everything still attached to them too? Do you still need to like, hunt somebody down in order to get approval to use these things? And can that sometimes be harder because they're old? Are the companies that sort of like, own these sounds like still around at this point?
You're talking about sample packs?
Yeah.
As right. I don't want to lead anyone astray or give away any.
Well, given everything that we've talked about so far, it's important to know.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, if it's a sample pack meant for using to make music, right, it's all good.
Yeah, at one time that would have been sold. Your permission to use those at your leisure was at one time when you purchased it. But now they're just floating out and about for free, and they're not in stores anymore.
Right. Right. And I'm not sure how that quite what the legalness of it is or whatever, but
there's a lot of gray legal areas to this whole conversation.
Yeah,
so
what I can say is they are ready available on the internet, and not you have to go on the dark web or fucking shit like that. They're pretty like just there.
Somebody in chat is asking maybe a pretty basic, but I think important question, because there's a knowledge gap here when it comes to like, people like you, when it comes to sampling and the average amount of knowledge or understanding of it for the average person. Somebody is just asking, simply, how is sampling generally not covered by what, they sort of like understand are fair use laws. Like how does fair use not just like kind of give people the ability to just like wantonly sample anything and just kind of treat it however they want?
Yeah, I'm not, again, I don't know much about it. I see a lot of people saying stuff like, oh, actually, like people in my comments going like, under 5 seconds counts as fair use. Under 10 seconds actually count. I'm like, dude, do not think that like you can do that. Don't.
Yeah, if that,
like all I can say is, don't assume. You like make sure all your ducks are in a row. You know what I'm saying?
If that was the case,
use 1 second.
If that was the case, I'd be just like throwing out sort of blips or whatever in my YouTube videos, but I'm very much not.
You would just put like the Lion King like in the middle of one of your YouTube videos.
And look, at the end of the day, like even with fair use, from what I understand, because I've looked into it, covering often non-commercial use of various sorts of media and so on and so forth. These publishing companies and these media companies can still take issue with your use of it on whatever platform that you're doing it on. And even if it's a bunk case, they have the lawyers, they have the money, they have the everything to drag you into court. So the thing is, unfortunately, even if a law is on the books, something maybe, you could be prevented or be sort of threatened simply because, you don't have the sort of representation. You don't have the sort of like budget that they do to sort of like go after anybody and everybody because of, your use of somebody's song and your work. I mean, consider like these are the same companies that not too long ago used to fucking pull children into court over music's downloading and Napster and so on and so forth. It's like, and charge average everyday American families thousands of dollars for downloading a fucking Eminem CD. It's like these are the same companies. These are the same companies. They will go after you. They will go after you for using a sample and in a way that they're not happy with, So
yes,
know that you are kind of playing with fire, even if kind 100%. Of the general tone around this stuff has changed a little bit because at the end of the day, it would probably be a waste of time and money, and it would be bad PR for, Warner Brothers to start suing random kids off Bandcamp for like, sampling a song of theirs. There's too much of it going on for them to cover all of it, but they're going to go after artists that get big doing it.
Yes. Like, right. That's what I'm saying. Like, if they're going after you, that means that there's money to be made. Like, It's kind of like, if that's your problem, it's kind of not a good problem, but it means that you have enough eyeballs and ears on you that it matters to them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure that, like you said, DJ Sabrina, the Teenage Witch or whatever, there's a bajillion.
The teenage DJ. She's a teenage DJ, damn it. She's a teenage DJ.
I'm sorry, Sabrina, my bad. You sound, but there's a million people on Bandcamp, on Spotify that are using crazy samples. I'm sure, a bajillion. But no one really cares until there's enough eyeballs, enough ears to where they go, oh, there's money, this is our money.
Right.
There's money here and it's ours. So, right. And they will do whatever they need to do to get that bread.
Somebody asked, I was wondering how
just like me. Sorry.
Somebody was asking, I was wondering how Baauer produced the Scarlord Ghostmane track. Came to be.
Oh yeah. That was one of those good ones where it just came out of nowhere. My manager just hit me up and was like, hey, Ghostmane is looking for beats. Do you have anything that would be good for him? And then I just I just cooked up a like 10 and sent him over. It was just, sometimes those things happen like out of nowhere kind of things. And those are the best. And the fact that he took it and released it, even better. I love that stuff.
For you personally as an artist, how do you feel like, considering how long you've been operating in the industry, what's kind of incentivized you to not just continue what you're doing, but sort of shift gears in a way to where you're almost kind of taking on a bit of a professorial or a teacher role and giving people, just random people, like more of an insight into the process and just giving us kind of more commentary as, you know, not just a musician, but a music fan. You know, is this something that you feel like is kind of like adding to your overall brand and your bottom line at the end of the day, or are you just simply doing this because you think it's fun and you're doing it out of passion?
It's a great question, and it's something I think about a lot. Like, do I want to be the fan? Like, I was an artist, you know what I'm saying? Like I am an artist.
Yeah, you are currently an artist.
I was an artist. I used to be like very behind the scenes, you know?
Right.
Didn't show myself, didn't show my face. I was like cool graphic design. I'm not out front, you know, everything's looking cool. And now I'm transitioning to where like, I'm talking with you. I'm doing content. And it's kind of it's happened step by step, you know, like first doing a stream, just trying out Twitch streaming. I like that. Then clipping some of the stuff. And it's happening step by step. But you know what? It feels like there's energy there. And so I'm going with that energy. You know what I'm saying? I think I see that's how conversations are had now, you know, in clip form. That's how information is passed. So I kind of feel like I'm slotting into this environment. You know what I mean? And I feel like people react to my passion and my love. I think I communicate how I genuinely love the music I'm talking about. And so I see that as a positive thing. Yeah, no, I didn't plan it. This is not like something I would like envisioned. You know what I'm saying? It's very much just like the way things went.
You're just doing it as you go along. You didn't have a grand media strategy going into this.
No, I don't.
Somebody in chat's asking a good question that I'd like to elaborate on. I mean, obviously, you know, from the discussion that we've had so far, you've sampled a lot of different stuff, and you've talked about a lot of different samples, you know, on your streams as well, and different kinds of samples in different musical contexts. Like in your opinion, in terms of just personal taste, I think we could just kind of bring it down to personal taste. Are there some genres or eras of music that you think are like kind of better for sampling than others, you know, in terms of like certain sounds and aesthetics that you just feel like are more ripe for the picking? But, you know, again, asking that knowing you're a man that sampled a German guy slapping his belly, you know, obviously for you, there's obviously for you, there's no boundaries. Okay. But like, you know, generally speaking.
And yes, 100%. And I do love to step outside. I'd love to sample weird stuff like that, like unexpected weird shit. But I would say consistently the best shit, and this I kind of copied this from, there's a Fatboy Slim video where he's talking about how he made maybe Rockefeller Skank or one of his big tracks, and he says when he went to, because he was digging in the vinyl like you say, and he's like
the proper way to do it,
the proper way to do it, and he says if the cover looks cool, if the band looks cool, and it's 60s, 70s, that's like the money. And like, it's pretty true. Like 60s, 70s, like funk is just the best. And I think it's the stuff that has been sampled the most. I think you know, you see that happening, you know? So if I ever see like some
generally speaking, that does kind of seem to be the era, you know, 60s, 70s, funk, soul, hard,
right. And like, that's where like the Amen break. The Amen break comes from, with like the most sampled piece of audio is a drum break from, I don't know the exact release date, but you know, it falls in that time period.
Right.
So I'd say that's but I try to go outside that. Don't get stuck in that. You know what I'm saying? There's great stuff everywhere. And I'm inspired by like seeing, when I look at a Prodigy track, they took a Nirvana track that was released the year before. Right. Like 90, you know what I'm saying? So this guy it's the equivalent of looking at a track that was released 2023 and sampling
some samples are
like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I mean, also consider the fact that like, you know, that golden age of hip hop, a lot of those rappers and producers were literally sampling their contemporaries. They were sampling a track that came out the previous year. You know, you had, you know, a beat that had just, you know, a Beastie Boys vocal drop in it or whatever, you know, just a random blah, you know, I mean, that was happening all the time. That was common.
Yeah. Which is so cool. And I love that stuff. But again, like, it'd be tough. It'd be hard if you want to go back and sample, I don't know, some track from 2023. I don't know what that process would be, but I don't think it would be easy. You know what I mean? I guess it depends.
It is. I mean, yeah, it's all a case by case basis. Is there any reason off the bat?
Case by case.
Is there any reason that off the bat you think it would be harder?
Because just now labels are more. I don't know, actually. No, maybe now I'm thinking about it more. No, it's a case by case. You're right.
Okay. You know, as far as like the process of sampling and maybe even sort of like artistic approaches to it, or maybe even the technology associated with doing it, in your view, has there been sort of like a lot of change over the years or even in recent years in terms of like how people are sampling, capabilities when it comes with sampling? I mean, you know, I know recently there's been like a lot of developments in terms of like vocal isolation technology and that sort of thing. You know, there's like loads of tracks out there where it's like, you know, literally the most nude guitar, you know, bit from a song that you would have never been able to filter out like in 1980 or whatever. You know, do you feel like there's a lot of excitement or cause for, you know, looking forward to the future when it comes to sample-based music based on what kind of like, you know, advancements we're seeing in terms of like what's out there in terms of the ways you can chop it or flip it or whatever? Have things been changing on that front too, or is it kind of the same old, same old?
No, I think what you're talking about, like you're making me think of the AI stem separator, which is
also how does AI pull into all of this as well?
Or let's just call it the stem separator. I don't want to shout out AI too much, but like so I'll just, for me, I will do that almost every time I get like a cool sample. I can toss it in this stem separator, and then it can give me like a really good isolated vocal, isolated drums, isolated guitar, and it's good. And then sometimes I will use just the drums from a track or just the vocals from another track. And it's just and I wonder, like, wow, how is this going to, what's this going to look like going forward? I know everyone's doing this. I know every producer is doing this and whatever. There's also a thing that I just thought of where you can, like, I'm sure you've seen it, like use your voice and plug it into a program and it'll spit it out and sound like Nicki Minaj is like saying what you just said.
Right. Exactly.
And that's also an interesting thing to think about. Like, what's the legality there? If you use your own lyrics or something and just have a program make it sound like Nicki Minaj is saying it. Or if you just use it as a sample. What if I like drop the bass and then have it like sound like, you know, Nicki Minaj is saying that, and I put it in my dubstep song. I don't know. You could
do it. It's doable.
But that's right. So that's what I see is like the newest, you know, the stuff with sampling, like with the most current technology. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think of a couple of different things. You know, I think of somebody like Neil Cicierega, for example, who came out with these like really absurd, and I had him on stream a while ago, but he came out with these really absurd music sample-based albums. They were called like Mouth Sounds, Mouth Silence, so on and so forth. They were very jokey and silly and mimetic, and part of the reason that they were is like all the songs, you know, on one record would have samples of Smash Mouth's All Star, and he would try to figure out how many different ways he could sort of like flip that song and sort of make it work over different instrumentals. But part of the reason he was able to do that, as he told me on stream, was that he was basically like getting all of these various isolated tracks from different songs off of Guitar Hero forums, because people like hacked into, you know, the whole sort of fucking game, and they pulled out, you know, the various separated pieces of instrumentation on any given track. And with that specificity and with everything being separate, he was able to like literally make the vocals from Smash Mouth's All Star work over the instrumental to Modest Mouse's Float On. and a host of other songs too, where they sound like, like naturally together or whatever. And, as you're kind of saying, with that stem separator, people don't have to go on a fucking Guitar Hero forum to get that kind of specificity, and kind of rearrange a host of different things. It's just kind of a matter of people kind of having the creativity and the time to do it, I guess.
Right. I like I'm fascinated with what people will come up with, with this kind of technology. And the Guitar Hero thing is crazy too. I was just like talking with someone recently about it, how those were real stems. They got like actual stems from like these old classic songs.
Well, they must have gotten like the master tapes or something.
Yeah, they got the master tapes for Guitar Hero. It's just so funny.
Well, it's such a lucrative game. I'm sure they had all the money in the world to sort of like throw at these labels. 100%. A bit of nostalgia here, and maybe I'll sort of like let you go. I wanted to ask you if at one point, were you ever sort of like a Girl Talk fan, or sort of like paying attention to Greg's work when he was, coming out with kind of those key albums? I was talking with or I have had discussions recently with people who are younger than me that were just like completely unaware of that album, that era, that everything. And it's weird because like as popular and as hot as it was during that moment, I imagine because it is hard to kind of make a living off of doing that sort of thing. And also like, it's not exactly like the music industry wants to incentivize it. It feels like it's almost kind of gone to the memory hole. And Feed the Animals and all that other shit that he dropped during that time, which again, stuff that was massively popular around that early internet era, has kind of almost like gone into obscurity. And there's a lot of people who are in that sort of like mid to late 20s range in terms of age that just have no idea that there are multiple albums of these just gigantic 20, 30 sample on a single song mega mixes of pop songs, rock songs, rap songs. And it's just like hitting you with just one just banger after the next, and it's all working together so harmoniously. Is that an artist or an example of an artist that you look to in terms of like, for inspiration or like how to kind of do it right or how it could be done?
I don't know. He is just incredible at what he does. I don't think I couldn't do it. And I remember when Girl Talk was like popping, I was like copying Girl Talk. I was like, oh, let me do a mashup thing. Cool. And what I discovered is that shit is so hard. It's so impressive what he did. How he's able to like interweave these different songs so seamlessly.
Massively hard. And also like, and I don't know how much of this is bullshit, but I remember back in the day, as I was sort of like starting to graduate college and kind of like, start working in radio, and I was getting more into audio production. And I was getting, sort of like used to a lot of the editing programs that were sort of popular at the time. I remember seeing an interview where he was like showing how he does some of what he does. And he was showing the fucking camera person how he was editing these tracks in Cool Edit Pro. And I was like, you're doing these fucking tracks in Cool Edit Pro. It's not like on an MPC or like Pro Tools or this elaborate music workstation. You're doing it in fucking Cool Edit Pro. Are you insane? Like, so it's like, it's kind of even more impressive that he was doing it that at least maybe in part,
incredible.
Doing some of these tracks in Cool Edit Pro.
Incredible. And so I think it is worth. So I saw him live a couple times, and it was like a great show experience too. And I think that's where he made his money. I think he toured crazily because all those albums were free, right?
Right. Yeah. All those albums were free. He would have to have made his money on touring.
Right. So, and I don't think I don't know what. Did he get in legal trouble? Were labels coming after? They must have been
I think because he just kind of kept everything free, he was mostly good. I don't even know if he ever kind of formally came out with CDs of his stuff outside of his like really early work, which was on some obscure like indie type labels. And I think he partially kind of got away with a lot of that stuff is because, I mean, he was like, while he was sampling tracks, he was also like doing harsh noise over them. So it's like you couldn't quite tell everything he was doing. It was a little obscured because like maybe you're hearing some Michael Jackson, but there's like 5-4 layers of like and static on top of it or something. But then all of a sudden he went into like full dance DJ mode and just kind of started sampling everything and putting it out for free.
I think that's part of also a reason why it may have been sort of memory hold, like you say, like it was all free And I think it was like, I think he like went crazy touring, like he toured hard.
He did tour hard.
And so I think that just made it a thing of the moment, kind of like you had to be there kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so now that
so many of those samples were recent and based on sort of like new hits at the time. And I feel like a lot of people's appreciation and nostalgia for that had a lot to do with kind of the currency of a lot of what was being worked into those tracks.
Yeah. And now, like, it's basically like that. I just see that on TikTok all the time. Basically just people doing girl talk, you know?
Yeah.
Like, these songs work perfectly together, and they're just doing like a mashup.
Right. It's just a weird mashup.
Funny. So it's just a mashup, and like, so it's basically back, just in a much dumber form, you know?
Totally different form. Yeah. Different format.
Yeah.
Where it's
different format. Not done is cool.
Yeah, I know. It's it's too bad we're sort of looking at the slow death of the album format, because it would be great again to have another 30, 40, 50 minute long album where it's just like this endless barrage of dance beats and just like samples on samples and samples. It was insane. It's just kind of crazy that like even with all of the access, you would think that with all the technology, all the internet access, all the stem separation potential, so on and so forth, that like the potential or the popularity or, the commonality of records like that would just increase. But it feels like it's just kind of like, it feels like exactly the opposite. It feels like exactly the opposite has happened.
100%. Maybe it's like too much choice, too much. There's too much information. There's too much to be done. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to let you go get some of the things done that you have to get done, I'm sure. But I appreciate you coming through and just being an open book and talking to us about sampling.
It was so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I loved your opinions, your takes, everything, man. You're the best.
Thank you. You are too. Check me out here on Twitch, Baauer, twitch.tv/Baauer.
Before you head out, is there anything else that people should be kind of like, looking for from you down the pipe? You got anything coming up that people can anticipate?
Yeah. So on my Twitch, I'm working on music all the time. I'm doing what I say. I just trawl the internet for samples and flip them.
You're not just talking the talk. You're walking.
I'm not just no. This conversation has been 1,000 times more intelligent and informative than anything I talk about on my stream.
Stop.
So, and then I'm releasing music all this year. I'm getting ready to release music this year, which is all, like we said, sample-based music. So I'm super excited to
all
unleash
sample-based. 100% of the publishing just gone in the trash. It's just complete, just done. So you got
just in the toilet.
These songs got a hit, and you got a tour.
That's 100% the case, my friend. So if I go tour, come see me, baby.
Well,
and then check me out on TikTok, Baauer Music on TikTok. That's where I put my little sample breakdowns, and on my Instagram, all that.
Okay, well, awesome. There we go. Thank you very much for coming through, man, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Bye.
See ya.